You know, she wasn't so bad.
Easy for you to say. No. Easy for me to say.
Next Sunday on BBC1, the return of Strathblair. A new era begins in Strathblair next Sunday at 7:50 on BBC1.
In 15 minutes, Jolie Richardson and Sean Bean star in part 3 of Ken Russell's adaptation of Lady Chatterley. Before that, on BBC1, the news at 20 minutes past 9 with Michael Berg.
Labour's called on the government to come clean over Tory Party funds after new allegations of links with Asil Nadir. John Major said tonight any money that was proved to be stolen would be handed back. And the fight back falters. Atherton caught a yard short of his crease and a run short of his century. Good evening. John Major promised tonight that any stolen money that had been paid into Conservative Party funds would be returned after more allegations about the Tories' links with the escaped financier Asil Nadir. Hundreds of thousands of pounds he gave to party funds are alleged to have been stolen. Downing Street has said that's just speculation. The Labour leader, John Smith, called on the Tories to come clean over what he described as their murky financing. He also said the Prime Minister should decide now on whether the Northern Ireland Minister, Michael Mates, should be allowed to stay on in government after reports about his links with the public relations company that represents Mr Nadir. Mr Mates has denied any impropriety.
Arriving in Copenhagen for the European summit tonight, the Prime Minister couldn't avoid his domestic difficulties. He ignored questions about Mr Mates' future, but he did give this pledge on Asil Nadir's donations.
Any money that was dishonestly obtained and dishonestly donated to the Conservative Party is not wanted by the Conservative Party. If it proves to have been dishonestly obtained and dishonestly remitted to us, then of course we will return it. The Conservative Party exists on funds raised within the constituency and honestly and freely donated to the party. That is the way for a democratic party to survive.
With Asil Nadir in northern Cyprus threatening to make new revelations about his links with the Tories, the opposition is exploiting what it believes is fertile political ground and demanding an end to the secrecy surrounding Tory party donations.
It's a question of principle. There's a murky world of Conservative financing which needs to be cleared up. The best way for it to be done is for the law to be changed and for the Conservative Party to pay back the money which it shouldn't have got.
There's clearly a need for the rules to be tightened up where individual party donations are concerned, and that's something that we've already called for. Longer term, although it's never popular with the public, we're probably going to have to look at public funding of political parties to end some of these unsavoury connections which can develop.
A number of very senior Conservatives now believe the party may have to become more open about donations, and some believe the Nadir cash should be repaid whether or not it was stolen.
One way of dealing with the issue is to recognise that that money will never appear. However, honourable it appeared at the time to be a legitimate donation, and to send it back.
Back in Mr Mate's Hampshire constituency, there was a party gathering today, but no sign of the MP.
Whoever you want to see is not here.
Some supporters remain worried, despite Mr Mate's categoric denial that there's been anything improper in his contacts with the PR company that represents Asil Nadir.
It's very bad publicity for the Conservative Party. I think he's in a very difficult position.
Downing Street today described reports that the PR company loaned Mr Mate's a car as trivial. But many Tories believe Mr Mate's position is no longer secure. He's already been criticised for giving Mr Nadir a watch. Some colleagues feel he now looks trouble-prone. In politics, that's a dangerous condition, and one from which it's hard to recover. Emma Odwin, BBC News.
After the collapse of the Vance-Owen peace plan for Bosnia, EC foreign ministers are meeting in emergency session in Copenhagen tonight to work out Europe's next step. Serbia and Croatia have an alternative plan to divide Bosnia on ethnic lines, but it's unlikely to be acceptable. The EC envoy, Lord Owen, said Europe had to ensure a fair deal for Bosnia's Muslims.
Lord Owen wants new instructions from the foreign ministers. He's hoping sanctions can still protect Muslim interests as Serbs and Croats press for ethnic partition of Bosnia.
I don't think there's any chance of sanctions being lifted unless these proposals are fair to the Muslim people and unless they meet some of the criteria which we've met. I don't think anybody can deny that it's going to be more of an ethnic split than many of us would have wanted.
But the Foreign Secretary refuses to contemplate straightforward ethnic partition for Bosnia, insisting there must be some shared central government.
It's going to be one country, that's clear. Not partition like the partition of Poland in the 18th century. But how that country is organized within itself, how many provinces and what their powers are, that's what the negotiation, I think, will be about. Thank you.
So the foreign ministers are confronting harsh reality. Lord Owen says they need not hang their heads in shame, but he wants a new mandate for the Geneva negotiations to try to protect Muslim interests. The Danish Prime Minister, who will chair the full summit, is still talking tough. Ethnic partition, he says, must be rejected.
We also stress that all parts should agree upon a peaceful solution. Using power to change territorial frontiers is, as we have stated, not acceptable.
The foreign ministers are likely to go on talking late into the evening. They still believe sanctions and the threat of further sanctions give them some leverage, but the reality is the European community is not in a powerful position. Their reduced ambition now is to try to limit as far as possible the power of the Serbs and Croats to squeeze the Muslims still further. James Robbins, BBC News, Copenhagen.
In Bosnia, a tense ceasefire has been holding since Friday, but throughout the central belt of the country, the warring factions seem to be preparing for a last desperate battle for territory. From Vitez, Kate Adey reports.
No one in the disputed areas of Bosnia knows for certain what comes next. Doggedly getting on with farm work in the valley patrolled by the British troops, the Croats and the Muslims are undoubtedly in the mood for a possible final reckoning, in which neighbour will kill neighbour, or at least burn his house down. Today, the British were encountering a maze of front lines, only 100 yards apart, hearing from all the Serbo-Croat phrase, for the calm before the storm.
Whatever happens at the diplomatic talks about partition, on the ground it's seen as a house-to-house fight. No one has drawn a map yet. So both Croats and Muslims see it as a fight over each town and village.
And all the signs are there of preparation for a dirty fight. Country lanes strung with tripwire to mines, spotted just in time by the scimitar's crew. Among the cherry trees, the odd claymore mine ready for remote detonation. Today saw the 6th attempt by these Croats to get 43 badly injured people away from a frontline makeshift hospital. Meanwhile, the Serbs were removing one of their soldiers from a Muslim minefield. It is a three-way mess which defies negotiation. Kate Adey, BBC News, Vitez.
Here, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. George Carey, has issued a vigorous challenge to the government over pit closures. In a sermon at Sheffield Cathedral tonight, Dr. Carey urged the government and others involved to manage change carefully, rather than, as he put it, create a trail of chaos and bewilderment.
There's a sense of injustice and bitter anger in the affected mining communities, and a wider disquiet among thinking people across party lines as they watched the gates slamming on so much investment, so many skilled and good workers, and such rich natural resources.
More than 2,000 American Marines have now arrived off the coast of Somalia to reinforce the United Nations peacekeepers. The UN has resumed its distribution of food aid in the capital Mogadishu, but only on a limited basis. Distribution was stopped 2 weeks ago after attacks on UN troops.
Aid was taken out of the port in easily guarded lots with a strong military escort, while offshore the American Navy made its presence known. The distribution was an experiment to see if it's safe for UN personnel to resume aid after the retaliatory strikes in the south. The guards were from the United Arab Emirates. Nobody was risking the use of Pakistani troops. It was they who were ambushed and who later shot at demonstrators. This was one of only 2 centres in the southern area the UN felt able to go to.
If we will be able to do 2 sites in the south, see the success of the today operation, slowly we will be able to expand.
Those that were to get food said they hadn't received aid for nearly 3 weeks.
These are people who have had to get used to being continually malnourished and weak. Any interruption in supply is a reminder of their vulnerability and adds to their desperation.
The UN will take comfort from getting supplies to some of those that need it. It will want to reach many more to refocus attention on its humanitarian role. Martin Dawes, BBC News, Mogadishu.
Floods caused by heavy rains have caused havoc across Bangladesh for the 3rd time in 2 months, leaving 200 dead and more than 1 million stranded. Much of the devastation is in the northeastern area of Sylhet, but parts of the capital, Dhaka, are underwater, and southern coastal areas are badly affected, with reports of massive damage to crops. The first proper train has travelled through the Channel Tunnel from Calais to Folkestone. It took 2 hours to complete the test run because underground work is still going on. But when the train goes into full operation next summer, the journey should take less than 30 minutes.
The Channel Tunnel project has been beset by delays and financial problems, so the operators will have been heartened by today's crossing. The Eurostar train has been thundering along French tracks for months. Today it entered the tunnel at Calais for a snail's pace crossing. It was a slow and careful journey. Emerging first at Folkestone wasn't the futuristic-looking train, but a routine French diesel locomotive. The test train can't yet run on its own power through the tunnel. The train that made the journey today is 7 coaches long. Those that will operate services to Paris and Brussels by this time next year will be twice that, completing the Channel crossing in half an hour. The train will be hauled up to London this week to begin 4 months of tests under its own power on British Rail track. Laurie Margolis, BBC News.
The IRA has shot and wounded a 41-year-old Protestant man at his home in the Loyalist Shankill Road area of Belfast. 2 gunmen fired 3 shots through the living room window of the house. The victim, a taxi driver, was wounded in the head and shoulder. He's now in a stable condition in hospital. England's cricketers have fought back with more determination on the 4th day of the Lord's Test. Australia enforced the follow-on, and in their second innings, England have made 237 for 3 wickets, still 190 runs behind.
Following on, a small matter of 427 runs behind, England, in order to save the match, needed the cricketing equivalent of a miracle in front of a packed and universally sceptical Lord's crowd. But Mike Atherton, drawing on the confidence of his first innings, set them on the way with an authority belying their predicament. Gooch, too, was in positive mood, and the pair had put on 71 in assured fashion before the captain received a devilish delivery from Warne. Out for 29, but for once it heralded no collapse, as Atherton, displaying faultless shot selection, went calmly on towards 100 in a century stand with Gatting. At last it was a contest, but with England, disaster always lurks, and it struck as Atherton tried to turn at 97 into a thoroughly deserved century. Gatting cried no, Atherton's feet just wouldn't respond. Run out for 99, and with Smith out soon after, in that one moment the test may well have been lost. But Mike Gatting continued to mix aggression with dogged defence, and he'll be there tomorrow, with England now glimpsing faint signs of salvation, but there's still a long way to go. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
Wimbledon starts tomorrow with attention focused almost as much on the players' safety as on their tennis. The Women's Championship, the 100th, is without Monica Seles, who was stabbed during a tournament last April. Today, the players were at a garden party in West London.
An annual ritual, this, hosted by the Hurlingham Club every year to help the players relax, as well as limber up before the championships begin. But even in these genteel surroundings, security was evident, if unintimidating. The stabbing of Monica Seles 2 months ago in Hamburg by a man who'd been stalking her for months has left an uneasy atmosphere among the tennis fraternity.
I think the players are concerned about it, and they, especially the top players, are probably looking over their shoulders a little bit.
I played up in Eastbourne last week, and they had the chairs changed around where we faced the umpires. I mean, our backs faced the umpire's chair, and I mean, I thought it was kind of odd. I didn't really like that setup.
More guards will be employed at the All England Club this year, and there's been close liaison with Wimbledon police.
We revised last year's plan. The security of the players is the responsibility of the club, and they've made their plans, which I am aware of, and I'd be very happy with them if I was a player.
Many players rent houses in Wimbledon and patronise restaurants and shops. Police say they can't guarantee safety, but they're confident of their precautions. Gary Lloyd, BBC News.
And tonight's main news again. The Prime Minister has promised that any stolen money paid into Conservative Party funds will be returned. Labour has called on the government to come clean over the party's financing. That's all tonight from the newsroom. Good night.
Hello. Now those are thunderstorms over southern Europe, and there they will stay because high pressure just west of the British Isles will give the British Isles a mainly dry week, and that'll continue right through the week too. Even the farmers can't complain, but they will complain because it won't be completely dry. Those weather fronts will brush across the north, giving a little bit of rain from time to time, and it won't be all that warm because the winds are coming in from the north or the northwest all the time. And it isn't dry at the moment. You can see showers on that western part of Scotland, 1 or 2 showers in the English Channel as well. But most of us are going to have a dry night, a few patches of mist, quite a cool night in the north as well. And then tomorrow, well, a mainly dry day. A little bit of light rain or showers in the north and northwest of Scotland, otherwise mostly dry. The best of the sunshine in southern districts, South Wales, southern parts of England and the Channel Islands too. But most places in the south getting at least a little brightness, a little sunshine at times. Light north to northwest winds everywhere. Temperatures like today's, in other words 14 to 16 in the north, 16 to 19 in the middle, 19 to 21 in the south, but less windy than it has been today over Scotland. So up there it'll feel a little bit less cool than it did today. Looking further ahead, mostly dry on Tuesday, a little bit of rain in the northwest, and dry again on Wednesday with sunshine at times, especially in the south.
Did you manage to get the perfume you wanted?
From La Maison de la Femme de l'Amour. Pounce!
Oh, I don't know what you're doing.
Would you like a little squirt, Mum?
No, thanks.
Affairs of the Heart in Every Silver Lining, Thursday at 8:30 on BBC1.
15:40 and match point Miss Round. She serves, Miss Round returns. Fred Perry wins the men's singles championship.
Over 60 years of championship coverage on BBC television and radio.
Absolutely inspired.
The world's greatest tennis tournament begins tomorrow on the BBC.
Uninhibited passion now on BBC1 as the affair of Lady Chatterley continues in Ken Russell's television adaptation starring Jolie Richardson and Sean Bean. Tonight's episode contains strong language.
I got summonses for the 2 poachers, like you said.